as June is Men's Health Awareness Month. And I have with me Orion Jones from True North Motivation. And Orion, tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, I was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest. And so,
Okay.
I'm not an Ohio native, but I've been here for 10 years now. So I feel like that my roots are strongly planted in the Ohio farming dirt.
You're a transplant.
I am. But, I definitely call Ohio home. And,
Okay.
I have a background of, I was a head college baseball coach for years. I was in the construction industry. I was the director of operations and capital projects for Tiffin University and the University of Findlay for a decade. That's what brought me out here with my family. And, recently I started a company called True North Motivation. And so, I always say that my trials and tribulations are no better and no worse than anyone else's. They're just mine. And, God put me through a situation in life that not only brought me to him, but opened up a lot of doors for me in my life for me to go down. And I chose to go back to school and start getting my doctorate degree from the University of Findlay in educational leadership. And I started studying depression and mental health, which led me to opening up this company of True North Motivation.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about then your motivation for opening this.
We all have a rock bottom, and I hit mine, and I almost took my own life one night. And
Okay.
so, like I said, we all have our own situations in life, and I try to say that mine are no better and no worse. But that was my rock bottom, and that's when I was introduced to my Savior, and God came into my life, and that's what led me to say, I'll never be in this situation again. And how do you build yourself back up from rock bottom? And so that's what I dove into the academic research and the lived experience and started to learn the process on how do you become the best version of you. And what is stage one, step one from rock bottom? And that's the hardest point is, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Where do you start?
Well, let's talk about that. Where do you start? Specifically, gearing towards men, since it's Men's Health Month, and we've talked about this numerous times. And we're both in our Rotary groups together, and
Yes.
and this topic has come up during the conversations with us at the table, and you say that men's suicide rates and men's attempts are a lot of times overseen.
Yes. And so, 80% of completed suicides in the United States in 2022 and 2023 are done by men. So, but only 15% of us seek mental health and mental health care for our problems because male masculinity, stoicism, and all the other things that go along with being a man. And I was no different. I didn't think I needed quote unquote help. And I didn't have the tools and coping mechanisms in place in my life to be able to overcome what I was going through. And so that's what I realized is the message today is not resonating with men. And how can I create a message that will crack that proverbial code to be able to help more men seek their purpose, find their why, and find the best versions of themselves. And that's where this program that I developed of the I Am philosophy of finding your true north, your purpose, your why through the 4 pillars of forgiveness, gratitude, love, and faith is a message of strength, power, and control for men that allows us to be able to look within ourselves, love ourselves, and still keep our man card while doing it because that's
a huge one. A lot of times men do feel that if they show a sign of weakness, any kind of weakness, and a lot of times that pressure to be so strong is what cracks.
Yes. And that's exactly what deters us from seeking help, that 15% only of us that seek professional help. And so again, what is the message that works? And for me personally, it was that time where my best friend that I went to school with, played college baseball with, he was more direct with me, let's say. And, I was really at the lowest point in my life, and I was talking to him, and I didn't need another shoulder to cry on. And he was like, dude, suck it up. And he was like, pull yourself together. He was like, you're better than this right now. And he was like, you're a grown man, and you need to deal with this situation. And I call it leading with a backbone and a heart, and we all need both. And we need that, I needed that ability to be vulnerable as well, but I also needed that person in my life to be able to say, hey man, let's go. We need to pull ourselves together. We need to grab onto our bootstraps. And I think that that's a message that's missing so often, and what keeps men away from seeking help is that I'm not one to go lay on the psychologist's couch and express all of my feelings from my childhood or whatever that might be. And but I still need to have at times a sensitive ear. And that's where the leading with a backbone and a heart allows me to be vulnerable, but also allows me to lead men with, hey, there's accountability, there's discipline, there's structure. If you want to become the best version of you, it's not easy, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you, but it's incredible when you take those steps and you go through the process to do those things.
So what is the process to do those things, and how do you take that first baby step to admit to yourself, admit to a loved one, because sometimes that's harder than anything else, to say, I'm not there, I'm not all that I can be, I'm not the version that I think I should be.
So stage one, step one in the process that I've developed is the accountability mirror. And it's pointing thumbs at yourself and stop pointing fingers at other people. Because so often we choose to say, it's your problem, and you did this to me, and you did this to me, and this person treated me this way. Instead of looking at the common denominator on all those situations, I say the common denominator in the fingers is the thumbs that goes back to you.
Well, they always say, you point one finger in one way, you've got three fingers back at you.
Yes. So exact same premise. And it's that first step of peeling back the layers of the onion to, if you don't deal with your own personal faults and shortcomings and look at those, then you'll never be able to start the process of healing. And it's the hardest thing in the world to do. But when you start looking in that accountability mirror and you say, what did I do wrong? Who am I as a man, as a person, and what are my shortcomings? Instead of blaming others, that is literally stage one, step one on the process towards healing.
So when you do that, though, can you go and spiral so much further downward, because now you're looking at all of your own faults and all of the things that you're doing contributing to what's wrong with your life, that can you take a step back before you take that step forward?
And that's where there is professional help. 988 is the suicide help hotline, and I want all of you to write that down. 988. If you ever need help anytime, and it's not just if you're at that last stage of your time, contemplating suicide. You can discuss. You can say, "Hey, I'm having a really tough time. I'm struggling," and that number and that help on the other line will be able to help guide you either to other resources that you might need, or else guide you out of the trials and tribulations you're going through right then. So I didn't, but I did have support around me. And that's so important, because if you're going to look into yourself, you're going to open up some wounds that are very difficult to deal with. And if you're truly honest with yourself, and that's what it's like, you have to be able to have brutal honesty with yourself. I did a drill called the I Am, where I took a piece of paper and I folded it in half, taco style, not hot dog, and I wrote down all of my I am negatives on one side of the paper. And that is, I'm not a good person. I'm not a good husband. I'm not a good partner. I'm not a good employee. All the things that you can cut yourself as deep as you can for what you can open up for your negatives. And then on the other side of the paper, I wrote down all my positives that either I feel about myself or I aspire to be. I am a good man. I am in shape. I am wealthy. I am successful. And it's all of the things that you aspire to be. I am honest, trustworthy, man of character, principle, all the things that you want to be. You fold that piece of paper in half and you rip it in half and you burn the negative. And so you keep that positive to where you can reflect on it, and those are your goals, and those are who you are, and you stop the negative talk. Because so often it's so easy for us to, even if we stub our toe or do something, lock our keys or whatever that is, the first thing we do, you idiot, I'm such a moron, I'm so stupid, I always do stuff like this. I challenge anyone out there who wants to grow to start that by stopping saying negative things about yourself.
Especially that negative talk to yourself.
It matters. In your brain, wires that fire together wire together. And so if you continue to tell yourself that you're not good enough, you're dumb, you're not strong enough, you're not capable, guess what? That's going to be what your end game is. And so whatever you tell yourself, Henry Ford said, if you think you can and you think you can't, you will.
Right.
That aspect of your life, if you view yourself a certain way, positively or negatively, you will.
So you need to be the little engine that could.
Absolutely. And it's hard. And it's a journey, not a destination. There's not a bus stop that we're going to get to that it's like, oh, yeah, I wrote down my IMs. I looked in the mirror and I'm good. You know, it's this progression. And that's where you start with the looking in the mirror and you start with understanding what your negatives are. And that leads into that 4 pillars of forgiveness, because the next stage after you look at those thumbs and you say to yourself, what are my shortcomings? Then you have to forgive yourself. And that's hard. And and to be able to look at yourself and be like, you know what? I have a past, but that doesn't define me. And it refined me. And one of my favorite, as a head college baseball coach in construction, I have a bucket of sayings, and I always say this is my favorite. So
you have many favorites.
Many favorites, but this is definitely one of my foundations in my company. And it's where other people put a period in your story, God put a comma. And so where other people said, this is who you are, period, God said, no. This is who you were, comma, and this is who you're going to be. And so when you have that mentality of that's not who I am anymore. And can a tiger change its stripes? You darn right they can. But it's a process, and it takes accountability and discipline and long-term, goals and motivations, and it takes a daily grind. But you can absolutely change yourself to the better.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
It is, but you can see the progression of how I developed my program, like I said, through my academic research and lived experience through it's this, hey, let's look at what we're forgiving ourselves for. To forgive yourself, you have to look in the mirror. You have to say, I am. What's the thumbs, not fingers? And then you have to forgive yourself, and then you have to forgive others. Because until you release that pain of what others have done to you, and we all have it.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's not the snake bite that kills you. It's the venom that runs through your veins. And so if you choose to allow that venom to run through your vein and that pain and that hatred to eat you up, I got news for you. It ain't hurting the other person.
No, it's not.
And you choose on whether you control you. And you control how you feel about a situation. And when you choose to release somebody, not because they deserve it, and not because they apologize to you. Because so many times we're like, oh, I'll forgive my sister or my brother or my mom or my dad or my friend when they say they're sorry. When they accept the fact that they harmed me and apologize for why they harmed me or why they did they wrong, that person probably doesn't even think about you. And, that person who really cuts you deep in your life, if you're holding on to that hate and anger, then you're only killing yourself. And so when you release them, you're not forgiving them for you. You're forgiving them you're not forgiving them for them. You're forgiving them for you. And releasing that pain for yourself to be able to say, you know what? I'm not going to allow you to be in control of my mind and my heart and my energy anymore.
So when it comes to then those people in your life that love you, that want to be that support for you, that want to be that tough love with a heart,
mm-hmm.
How do they go about doing that without pushing the buttons too much?
Right. And that's where each individual is different. And that's where, people who I coach one-on-one in my programs, as a baseball coach, or as a coach in general and as a leader, everyone's different psychology. I knew who I could push. I knew who I had to pull back from. I knew who I had to motivate. I knew who I had to kick in the butt. I knew who I had to coddle. And so it's all an individual situation on what your needs are for you developing in your own personal growth. And only you know you. And so sometimes we can surprise ourselves, though, and be like, wow, I am stronger than I thought. Wow, I am incredible. And you start growing. And I didn't know that I needed a butt kicking. But when my best friend did that to me, and he was not kind about it. And I won't say the words that he used with me on the radio, but,
we don't want to get fined.
But it was pull yourself together. If you don't pull yourself together, then there's no one else that can help you. And that's where, as a man, that's what I think is missing in today's society, is that strength. I love the saying, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Meaning that I'd rather have, that's what the basis of martial arts is that I'd much rather have the ability to, kill you with my thumbnail, but I want to clip bonsai trees in the garden, and it's the best leaders. It's the best version of yourself when you have the ability to be a warrior, but you choose to control yourself 100%.
I love that. Again, if someone wants to get a hold of you and talk to you about this, about the suicide rate, about maybe pulling themselves out like
Right.
you did, how do they do that?
Well, best way is, and the easiest way is truenorthmotivation.com. And that's my website. It has all my information, all my contact information. So you don't have to remember too much about what was that email address, what was that phone number. So truenorthmotivation.com is the easiest way to get a hold of me from there. And my phone number's listed on their email. And, I offer one-on-one coaching sessions. And I also currently I developed an hour of power, which I think is a niche in the market for businesses and operations and corporations to bring me in. If you want to celebrate your employees, don't just fill their belly with a pizza, fill their cup with a message. And where I can come in and I can consolidate my 10-week session into this 1 hour block of time. And it's such a powerful message, and your employees can walk out of there. They're not going to walk out of there with every single thing that I say, but they're going to grab something like, wow, I should forgive myself. I should release that pain. I should be more grateful. I get to do things. I don't have to do things.
Right.
Things happen for me. They don't happen to me. That resonated with me. And now I'm a better person. I'm a better employee, mother, brother, sister, because the better you live your life, the better life everyone else around you lives.
All right. Well, there's so much that we could talk about.
Oh,
we'll have to bring you back, definitely.
I love this guy. You're an amazing woman, Dawn. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. And just person in general. You have such a great aura and soul about you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love
you.
to have you back. And we're running a little late for our news, but it's so worth it. So, Orion, thank you so much. And stick around, and we'll be back with Lance in just a moment after these messages from our sponsors. And then we'll take a look at our news, our weather, and our sports on
Yeah.
Classic Hits
Thank you.
96.7. Thanks.